You know, sometimes our bodies have a way of whispering to us before they start shouting. And when it comes to our hearts, those whispers can be so quiet, so easy to miss, especially as we get older. Have you ever brushed off a strange ache or a wave of exhaustion thinking, oh, it's just part of aging? Maybe you've even felt a little off, but couldn't quite put your finger on why. Well, today we're going to talk about those subtle, silent signs of a heart attack that often go unnoticed in seniors. Because here's the truth, heart attacks don't always look like they do in the movies. No dramatic chest clutching, no collapsing to the floor. Sometimes it's just a nagging discomfort or a feeling that something isn't right. And that's why so many people miss the warning signs until it's too late. Now, I know talking about heart attacks can feel a little scary, but here's the good news. When we know what to look for, we can take action early. And that's exactly what this video is all about. We're going to walk through 5 silent signs of a heart attack that seniors often overlook. And trust me, most people miss number 3. By the end, you'll feel more confident about listening to your body and knowing when it's time to get checked out. So let's get started. The first silent sign is something you might not even connect to your heart at all: unusual fatigue. Now, we all get tired, right? A long day, a poor night's sleep, it happens. But I'm talking about a fatigue that feels different. Maybe you're suddenly wiped out after simple tasks, like making the bed or walking to the mailbox. Or perhaps you wake up feeling exhausted, even after a full night's rest. This kind of fatigue isn't just being tired. It's your body working harder than it should because your heart isn't pumping as efficiently as it needs to. Think of it like a car engine struggling to start. If that's happening to you, don't just chalk it up to aging. It could be your heart asking for help. Here's a real-life example. My friend Martha, who's 68, told me she started needing naps every afternoon, something she never did before. She figured it was just getting older, until one day she barely had the energy to climb her porch steps. Turns out she'd had a minor heart attack weeks earlier and didn't even know it. That fatigue was her heart's way of waving a red flag. So if you're feeling unusually worn out, please don't ignore it. Talk to your doctor. It's always better to be safe. Now, the second silent sign is a bit sneaky because it can feel like something else entirely. Shortness of breath. You might notice it when you're doing things that never used to wind you, maybe climbing stairs, carrying groceries, or even just getting dressed. Or perhaps you wake up in the night gasping for air. This happens because your heart isn't moving blood through your body the way it should, so your lungs have to work overtime to compensate. It's like trying to blow up a balloon with a tiny hole in it. You're just not getting enough air where it needs to go. I'll never forget what Jim told me. He said he'd started huffing and puffing just walking from his recliner to the kitchen. He blamed it on gaining a few pounds over the holidays, but his wife insisted he get checked out. Good thing she did. His arteries were dangerously clogged. That shortness of breath? His heart was crying out for attention. So if you're finding yourself winded by everyday activities, don't assume it's just getting older. Listen to your body. It's smarter than we give it credit for. Now, these first 2 signs are important, but the next one, number 3, is the one most people miss. In fact, it's so subtle that even doctors sometimes overlook it. And that's exactly why we're going to dive deep into it in the next part of this video. Trust me, you'll want to hear this one. So stay with me and let's keep learning how to protect that wonderful heart of yours. Now, before we dive into the next silent signs of a heart attack, especially that surprising number 3, I want you to think about something. Have you ever had a pain or discomfort that just didn't make sense? Maybe it wasn't severe, but it was odd. Like your body was trying to tell you something, but you couldn't quite figure out what? That's exactly what happens with some of these silent heart attack signs. They don't always show up where we expect them to, and that's why so many people, even doctors, can miss them. So let's get right into it. Silent sign number 3 is one of the most commonly overlooked because it doesn't even happen in the chest. It's jaw pain. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Jaw pain? How is that related to my heart? Well, here's the thing. Your heart doesn't have a lot of its own pain receptors. So when something's wrong, it sometimes sends signals to other parts of your body. And for many people, especially women, that pain radiates upward into the jaw, neck, or even the ears. Let me tell you about my neighbor, Helen. She's in her early 70s, sharp as a tack, and always on the go. One evening, she was watching TV when she noticed a dull ache in her jaw, like she'd been chewing something tough. She figured it was her teeth and made a dentist appointment, but the dentist didn't find anything wrong. A week later, she had a full-blown heart attack. Turns out that jaw pain was her heart's way of sounding the alarm. Now Helen's doing great, but she always says, "If only I'd known." So if you ever have unexplained jaw pain, especially if it comes on without reason and lingers, don't just blame it on your teeth. Get your heart checked just to be safe. Now, silent sign number 4 is another one that flies under the radar: nausea or indigestion. And I get it, upset stomachs happen. Maybe it was something you ate or a little acid reflux acting up. But here's the red flag. If you're feeling queasy or have sudden, unexplained indigestion, especially if it's paired with any of the other signs we've talked about, it could actually be your heart. See, when your heart isn't getting enough oxygen, it can irritate nerves in your digestive system, making you feel sick to your stomach. Take my friend Carl, for example. He's a tough guy, former military, not one to complain. One morning, he woke up feeling like he had a bad case of heartburn. He took some antacids and went about his day. But the feeling didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. By that evening, he was sweating and lightheaded. His wife finally convinced him to go to the ER, and sure enough, he was having a heart attack. The doctor told him that what he thought was indigestion was actually his heart struggling. So if you ever have stomach discomfort that feels off, especially if it's accompanied by dizziness, sweating, or shortness of breath, don't brush it off. It's better to get it checked out. Now, we've covered 4 silent signs so far: unusual fatigue, shortness of breath, jaw pain, and nausea. But there's one more that's just as important, and it's something you might not even notice unless you're really paying attention. It's subtle, but it can be a major clue that your heart is in trouble, and we're going to talk all about it in the next part of this video. So stay with me, because this last sign could make all the difference in keeping you or someone you love safe and healthy. See you in the next part. We've covered 4 silent heart attack signs so far: fatigue that just doesn't make sense, getting winded too easily, that strange jaw pain, and unexplained nausea. But there's one more sign you need to know about, and it's one that catches so many people off guard. Before I share it, let me ask you this. Have you ever suddenly felt dizzy for no reason? Or broken out in a cold sweat when you weren't even hot? That brings us to silent sign number 5, sudden dizziness or cold sweats. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Dizziness? That could be anything. And you're right. But when your heart isn't pumping properly, your brain doesn't get enough oxygen, and that can make you feel lightheaded or even faint. And those cold sweats? They're different from regular sweating. I'm talking about a sudden, clammy feeling, like you're drenched, but you're not even warm. That's your body's way of sounding the alarm. Just last month, a viewer named Margaret wrote to me. She was gardening when she suddenly felt dizzy and started sweating like crazy. She thought it was just the heat until her daughter insisted they go to the hospital. Turns out she was having a heart attack. The doctor told her those cold sweats saved her life because they made her pay attention. So please, if this ever happens to you, don't brush it off as just getting older. It could be your heart asking for help. Let's quickly recap all 5 silent signs. Number 1, unusual fatigue that doesn't match your activity. Number 2, shortness of breath from simple tasks. Number 3, unexplained jaw or neck pain. Number 4, nausea or indigestion that feels off. Number 5, sudden dizziness or cold sweats. Now, if you notice any of these signs, especially if they come on suddenly, here's exactly what to do. First, stop what you're doing and sit down. Second, if the symptoms are severe or last more than a few minutes, call 911 immediately. And third, even if you're not sure, call your doctor. As my cardiologist friend always says, it's better to have a false alarm than a real emergency you ignored. Before we wrap up, I'd love for you to do 3 things for me and for yourself. First, tap that subscribe button below so you never miss these important health tips. We're always adding new videos to help you stay your healthiest. Second, share this video with 3 people you care about: your best friend, your sibling, your neighbor. These silent signs could save someone's life. And third, leave a comment below telling me which of these signs surprised you the most. Your story might help someone else recognize their symptoms. Remember, your heart speaks softly, but it's always worth listening to. Take care of yourself. Keep an eye out for these signs, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay healthy and keep shining.